Greetings and congrats on getting through the first several weeks. Now that you have a basic grasp of the purpose of government and how it fulfills its mission through policy, we can now more deeply examine how specific branches of government operate to fulfill those social contracts. Our third topic, which covers the next 2 weeks, will be about the structure and function of the executive, legislative, and judicial branches and how they work to achieve the goals of government. You'll also become familiar with how you, as a constituent, can interact with each of these branches. The goal of this section is to illuminate the complexity of the various branches and how it can help move change forward or hinder it. Additionally, by understanding how you can interact with these branches, you have insights into your ability to influence them. So as you remember, this is the political landscape framework. And basically, just to make sure that you are centered and grounded for this new topic, what we're going to be focusing on are institutions, the institutional portion of this framework. And remember that institutions are the political organizations and bodies with missions and priorities. Okay, so let's get started with the structure. Now, the structure of each branch is like a blueprint that shows how it's set up. It focuses on the following dimensions: how offices and tasks are organized within each organization, the hierarchy of power within these offices, the responsibilities of people in each branch, and the rules dictating how each branch is to operate. Now, you're already familiar with the major functions of each branch as outlined in the Constitution. However, significantly more about those functions can be found through official documentation and outlines. And these things generally outline the following: the detailed and specific mission and responsibilities of each branch, the workflow in terms of how tasks get done and how those tasks are carried over from one part of the organization to the other, and then also the powers and limitations. And these powers and limitations are also dictated by rules and processes. And an example of that are the checks and balances. So let's get started with Congress. So Congress is a bicameral structure with the House of Representatives and the Senate. And they create policies and laws, and those are created by members of Congress, or MOCs, who are elected by constituents, which is you and me. So what are members of Congress influenced by? What voters want, their own bias, the sway of citizens, whether it be individual citizens or groups, their personal ideology, partisan pressure, information about the impact of a decision that they might make, the influence of a majority or minority leadership among members of Congress, the agenda of the executive branch, and smaller nonpartisan government organizations that provide information and insights. And these smaller organizations could be things like the Office of Personnel Management, Office of Management and Budget, National Science Foundation, and more. So I do encourage you to look up these organizations if you have never heard of them. Now, the executive branch. This is led by the president, and at the local and state level, that would be the equivalent to a mayor or a governor. And then the executive branch is important to remember that it's comprised of major agencies that address key areas such as health, money, labor, housing, transportation, security, and more. And they are in charge of the execution of laws and policies. The executive, which would be the president, mayor, or governor, has mandates and agendas reflecting voters and other influencers. The executive gets advice from and influences the heads of major agencies who he or she appoints. At the federal level, this group comprises the presidential cabinet. Each agency is in charge of managing and administering resources and processes necessary to implement the laws and policies approved by Congress. There are full-time and part-time civil servants who are actually hired to work at these agencies to do this. Now, the people working at these agencies must follow the law in the execution of those policies. They also work with minor agencies to get information and execute their tasks and functions. Now, although they are not elected by voters, agencies must be accessible by the public. Additionally, citizens have certain rights to use the judicial branch as a way to get justice through review of court cases. They must go through a specific process to get their cases in court. Now we have the judicial branch. Now, the judicial branch is comprised of a body of judges and judicial administrators, and they are in charge of interpreting the law. And in other words, that means they address questions of legality. So the judicial branch is structured in the federal system of various higher and lower courts, with the highest court being the Supreme Court. Rules dictate where cases are to go in the federal system and the possibilities for progressing through the higher ranks of the court system. Judges are appointed by the executive and are supposed to act in a nonpartisan way, but are nonetheless influenced by their own ways of interpretation, bias, ideology, and to a certain extent, public opinion. Each judge has his or her own staff office. Judges are supposed to interpret the law and use various ways to do that, using textualism, originalism, structuralism, and contextualism. Various types of laws exist: administrative law, civil law, constitutional law, and criminal law. Now, judges are subject to impeachment or removal from office.
So that is it for this lecture. Your next steps are to go through this lecture again and review the supplemental learning material several times. And then also make sure that you are doing the same thing with your Chapter 3 book. And then also make sure that you're really digging into the exercises. And I also want to see more elements from the other parts of the learning material into your ebook chapter responses. And then please consider doing the Canvas bonus exercise. And as always, if you need any help, please let me know.